Hey guys, my name's Crystal Kenny, and I'm in love with creating. All things artistic and imagination involved. I'm an American girl who chased her creative dreams all the way to Paris, France, making a living using photography. This podcast takes you inside the stories of all the artsy folks I've met along the way and gives you that extra push to discover your creative gifts. The desire to create is deeply inside each and every one of us, and I give you the tools and inspiration to find a new way of living a more creative life. This is La Vie Creative, the podcast. So welcome to the show, Liba. How are you today?
Thank you. I'm very good. I'm happy to be here.
You have been a busy woman. You are doing all kinds of things in the creative community, but I want to go back to the start of where you're from and what brought you to France.
Okay, so I've actually lived all around the world and grew up in Southeast Asia and came to America when I was a young teenager. And I met my husband in the States. He's French. And I love the States. There's so many wonderful things about it. But when he asked me to marry him and come live in France with him, I was like, yeah, let's do that right away.
Understandable.
So that's what brought me to France, was love.
I love that you met a Frenchman in America who brought you back to France. That's so great.
Yeah. His souvenir. No, I'm just kidding.
The souvenir. And that was in 1993. So you've been here for a moment or two.
Actually, we got married in France at his parents' country house in Sologne in 1992. And then we actually left the States in 92 and traveled through Asia up into the through China up into the mountains of Pakistan, and all over Asia, Nepal, Indonesia. And for 6 months, realizing that once we got settled in France and started working, we would never have that opportunity again. So we did this huge trip, finished it in France, got married, and then just basically moved here in January of 93.
Well, what a way to kick off your marriage. I love that. Like, travel around. You were so right to do that because, once you're somewhere and work kicks in, then you just keep on chugging away at it.
Yep, exactly. And it's so hard to do something so luxurious as really, just traveling. And that was beautiful.
And so your work spans many mediums. You paint, you write, you design, you're a curator. Talk a little bit more about your work.
So I think probably I think that everybody has something creative in them. It could be science. It doesn't have to be in the arts. It's just to understand and create something that is being seen in a different way. I think there's nothing new under the sun, but we are unique beings, so we bring it back to the table in a unique way, which it should express ourselves. If it expresses ourselves, it's creative. So a lot of my friends, are they play instruments so all of my jobs are really kind of boiled down to creativity. And my big, big love is painting. That's what I'd like to be doing all the time, and writing. Those are my two favorite things. Now, I've also been a sort of a community organizer since I was a teenager. Literally, I have been involved in sort of community organizing all my life, all my teenage adult life. And I brought together a whole bunch of artists and musicians and performers together to I've been invited in these most amazing places to bring people together and sort of create events. And it started off where everybody would just sort of bring their part. Nobody had a budget behind it. It was just us sharing what we had with each other. And we'd end up having these exhibits in these incredible places and all around the world. And I started publishing books, and I'm currently just finishing off a tarot deck, which is coming out at the end of November. And this is 7 years of work.
Wow.
My last came out in 2015, 16. It came out in 2015, and I've been working on this since 2016. So it's with 7 women, took us 7 years, and there's an edition of 777 decks.
Whoa, that's amazing. Oh my gosh, you just unloaded so much on me. I have so many questions.
Sorry.
And I want to go back to your work specifically. Your work focuses a lot on the sacred feminine, ecology. Talk a little bit about why you're drawn to those things.
Okay, so that's a good question. Since my teenage years, I've always been a lucid dreamer since I was a child. And something kicked off during my adolescence and my change into being a woman. It was a super formative time. I'd had a lot of problems with my parents and school and authority, and I left home at a very early age, and I sort of ran away with these beautiful hippies that, were into going back to the land and treating nature correctly and respectfully and treating all the animals correctly. And I started working with ecological groups, and through my dreaming and my experiences, I came to sort of, I guess I could say, reconnect with our divine feminine. It's kind of like Black Lives Matter. Obviously, all lives matter, but our houses aren't on fire as a white person. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So we have to concentrate more where there's a problem. I believe in a divinity that is balanced between masculine and feminine. But the problem is that all the Abrahamic religions put the sacred feminine as the reason for the fall, why we got thrown out of the garden and we ate from the tree and, we became the temptress. And it really affected the way that women see themselves, and especially young girls see themselves with shame and that they're dirty and that they, there's a lot of confusion as to our divine role models. And so for me, the sacred feminine has been a lifelong sort of exploration, connection, and expression. I write about it, I conference about it, I paint about it. So it's a big thing, the ecology and the sacred feminine.
And so is that kind of a way of you contributing to society to kind of reset these ideas of us being, having all this shame? And as you said, a lot of it connects back to religion, and women are the center of all evil. And it's kind of what you're doing with your work is to kind of reset that mindset and bring some new ideas to the table.
Absolutely. And they're even old ideas. I mean, one of the conferences I give is about the goddess of the Near East. So the whole area from Saudi Arabia, Iran, Iraq, all the Levant, from Turkey and Syria, Lebanon, Palestine, Israel, all the way to Egypt was matriarchal. And this is one of the most terrible places for women to be today. And, it's a very interesting thing to remember that we're not doing a traditional thing by saying that God is this masculine force that is, doing everything, when the oldest religions from our first mythologies, they weren't, considered religions. They were religious. They were, mythology was religious. It was divine. And those earliest mythologies that we have in cuneiform tablets express a divinity that was both male and female, and that was one unit until it became separated. And that's a healthy way to see things. And then during the sort of monotheistic age, in the second millennium before Common Era, you have all these ideas of monotheism, and there was actually a kind of monotheistic goddess as well during that time. That was sort of when the Akkadians had all the power in Mesopotamia. This is in the Bronze Age. So, when we talk about tradition, well, we can go back to tradition then, and that means balance. So I do think that putting that on the table is super important for all the girls and women, for myself. I'm not an evangelist. I don't claim to know how reality works, but I have to navigate this mystery. So I definitely have a way of seeing, we all have our own paradigm. And I definitely believe that balance and love and respect are at the key foundation of any healthy community or planet.
Definitely, planet included. I think that's like a really beautiful way to say it. And the way society is moving today, at least in the Western world, I know we're all different parts of the world, but I mean, this whole area of all this talks about like, boys and girls, they can decide what they're more attracted to. Is a boy, is a girl, and shared restrooms. Do you think we're moving more towards that unity again and, sexism and things like that? Or do you think, it's the same as always?
I definitely think that we are moving towards that. And I think that probably, and this is again the big mystery, so what do I know? But it seems to me I'm very, very attracted to these ideas of golden ages that turn into eventually horrible Kali Yugas or apocalypses, but then spiral back up into a golden age. And the reason I like this idea is that it seems like this whole universe is pretty logical, when you start looking at the cycles and the way that it works. And it just seems like if we were in paradise all the time, we wouldn't appreciate the simplest things like our water, our air, our earth. And so by losing it, we're like, oh my God, what are we doing? Our water is sacred. Oh my God, what are we doing? The air is so important. So it's this whole, you never miss your water until the well runs dry. And I think that there is in so many cultures, this idea of these golden ages that turn into this sort of horrible moment where we really get a good reflection of what, it takes of sort of the horrors of our potential. And, it does take a very dark night for a star to sparkle. You need that contrast for one, love defines hate and beauty defines ugliness and wisdom defines ignorance. So you need those contrasts to sort of have this experience.
I completely agree. I mean, if things were all sunshine and rainbows all the time, like you said, we wouldn't appreciate anything. So we need this turmoil and we need these issues to really appreciate. It's sad that we need them, but that's life. It's all intertwined, right?
Yeah. And I think that honestly, there's, I'm just finishing off a trilogy on the most ancient esoteric system called the Sefer Yetzirah. And it's something that was used in the tarot and the Kabbalistic tree. And there's a beautiful verse. I can't quote it verbatim, but basically it says, even though we're tossed into these cycles of good and bad and everything, there's a covenant that says we can always come home. And I do believe that the Australian Aborigines say, we come here to learn love. And when we've learned it, we can go home. And that's so beautiful. And I really believe that's its sort of core beliefs that really resonate with me.
I think that's really beautiful. Yeah, about learning love. And that goes back to even like being reborn over and over again until we figure it out and we evolve. Exactly. And that's a really beautiful way of putting it. And you talked about lucid dreaming. Talk a little bit more about that. Does that really heavily influence your art? Do you believe that our dreams send us messages?
Yeah. So when I was 12, I lived in Indonesia and I was at a joint embassy school, which actually Obama went to.
Wow.
And, I wasn't there at the same time as him, or if I was, I didn't know him because we're not exactly the same age. But I had a teacher at the time. Jakarta there was no skyscrapers. It was very different in the 70s. And I had a teacher who was a hippie who lived on a commune, and my two best friends lived there, and they had their own theater and they had horses. And I really loved this place and I adored this teacher. And all his classes were invigorating, engaging, exciting. And one day, one of our lessons, he told us that before we went to sleep, that we had to tell ourselves that we would count to 5 when we fell asleep. So, because I trusted him and I believed him and he was my teacher and I was supposed to do this, I went ahead, and when I was in my dream, I remembered that I was supposed to count to 5, and I did it in my dream. And then I went back and I told him this, and he said, okay, now you're going to learn how to count to 10. And I learned this. And that's the big memory. But basically, it completely, when I had all my spiritual sort of awakenings when I was about 14 and 15, like the big ones, I'm constantly having spiritual awakenings at different times in my life, but it never ends. But at that time, the lucid dreaming became absolutely spiritual. It was almost like school. Like I was being shown sort of these amazing, what this experience was, and sort of just these amazing spiritual dreams that completely influenced me and definitely got into my paintings without a doubt.
And that's such a beautiful thing to be able to remember. I mean, so many people, when you wake up, they just kind of disappear. So do you find with this lucid dreaming, you're remembering more? Or do you still have to hurry up and write them down, or just say them out loud, record them to really hold on to them?
Yeah, very good. Very, very good point. Because even with myself, if I do not write it down, like within the first 5 minutes, I will forget it most likely, unless it was an extremely impactful dream. Then I'll be thinking about it all day. But I always keep a dream journal by my bed. I did try recording for a little while because a friend of mine was doing that. And I thought, what a great idea, because half the time my husband's asleep and I'm writing in the dark and I can hardly read what I wrote the next morning. So, when it's really time to get up. And because often I'll wake up, I have this weird thing where I sometimes try to convince myself it's not worth getting out of bed to write this down because I know this dream so well. But it's a classic. Like I sort of try to talk myself out of it. Like I don't need to get up because it's usually like 4 a.m. or something. But but I didn't like the recording. It was too complicated to get the thing on, and then I'd have to talk, and my husband was sleeping, and so I just scribble it into my dream journal.
Yeah, that makes sense. You don't want to interrupt anyone's sleep while you're trying to record your own dreams.
Exactly.
And talk a little bit about how people can reconnect to their spirituality. I know that's a big part of what many people believe to be creativity, is like sometimes we say like these creative spirits are speaking through us and we are only the vessel to, bring this stuff to life, or they'll move on to someone else. Like, do you believe in that? And how do you think people can connect to their own spiritual energies?
Yeah, it's wonderful. What you just said, I couldn't agree with more. Basically, I just put on a show in London that just ended, and we had an artist roundtable because we were actually seven artists at the roundtable. And we talked specifically about creativity and about what you just said about how we've all sort of channeled myths without even realizing they were myths. And then we discover years later the myth. And we're like, wait a second, I painted that years ago, And one of the artists, my friend Emma Watkinson, was saying was that she actually is so immersed in the thing she's painting, because it's also spiritual, that it becomes sort of integrated into her life, where there's all these synchronicities happening that correspond to the painting she's doing. And my other friend Melissa was like, that's it. That's because we are the living myth. And I think that there is something to be said about that. I think this goes back to the sort of first question, is that if we really want to tap into our spirituality, I think first we have to believe in our own intuition. Now, there's a very fine line between intuition and projection. So if there's fear, if it involves other people, that's another ballgame. But if you are having these amazing insights, or you have these very powerful dreams that just make so much sense, why shouldn't you believe it? So the first thing to do is to truly just believe yourself, believe in what you're being shown through your intuition, especially if it's powerful. And I think that to be creative, you have to let that unique understanding and expression, because it's almost like there's this universal message that's coming through each one of us, but we're like this silkscreen pattern. And so when it pushes through the print, it's going to come out a la Crystal, a la Liba, a la Emma, or a la Martina, or any of us artists, It's so we take what's universal, but we express it in our own unique way. And there is so much to be said about the muses. I mean, I have not talked to any of my close painter friends that paint really spiritual, dreams, visions, whatever. They all feel like, and me too, we feel like we're channeling these muses. Like whenever it's super beautiful, I'm just looking at my thing going, my God, thank you. I mean, I thank the muses. It's all me, but, it's all one being in my potential belief, I do believe that, but, it's a mystery. So yes, so creativity, trust in yourself, and be unique. Be the unique person you are.
I think that's really beautiful. And I think it takes a lot of pressure off the artist. And they're like, hey, I'm working with someone else besides myself, so you don't have to worry about being a genius all the time.
Exactly. And you've got to do like what I think it was, who said dance as if nobody's looking. It was it Emma Goldman, a great anarchist? I don't even know. I don't even remember who said it. It was such a great quote. Dance as if no one's looking. Paint as if nobody's cares. Do it because you can't do anything else but do that. There's just go for your urges. Go and paint or write or draw or dance or get in a play or research some crazy new thing that just showed up in the science world or whatever it is, but just go for it. What you want to do.
I love that.
Because if you're passionate, then you'll do a creative. You have to be passionate.
Yeah, you have to have that curiosity and that drawing towards it. And let's go back to the tarot card design. 7 years in the making, working with many artists, many decks. Tell me more, like, why did this project start? Where did it take you? I want to know everything.
Well, this is really, really, the other two were amazing projects too, but this is such an amazing, magical sort of thing. So I finished my last book in 2015, or I launched it in 2015. And it was so many people. There were 120 artists. It was just so much work. I was so burnt out by the end of it. It was beautiful. The book is beautiful. The exhibit was beautiful, but I was really burnt out. So I thought, if I do another project, I just want to do it with a small amount of people. It'll be so much easier. And I was kind of toying with the idea. I've been reading tarot since I was 14. It's always been something I'm attracted to. So, I always wanted to do my own tarot deck. And one day, and I talked to my friend Carrie Ann Bad, who's a painter, and I talked to my friend Michelle Basso. They both really wanted to do tarots as well. And then one day my friend Martina called me up and said, hey, I'm thinking of doing a tarot deck, and I'd love it if you wrote the booklet. And I said, well, I'm thinking of doing a tarot deck too, and it would be kind of strange because it would be the same probably information for both booklets. So we get talking and we realize we can do something all together. So at first we were just 4. It was 3 women with a man. And little by little things changed. The man got sick. He couldn't work with us or with anybody anymore. And this was, as sad as some things seem at the moment, I think that for the deck, it actually worked out because this whole thing unfolded where organically we kept adding till it was perfect and all the cards were accounted for, and we had 7 women. And it just, I think partially because of the changes, partially because the nature of how we work when we paint, we don't do like very quick abstract paintings. We're doing highly detailed Renaissance methods of glazing that take months to do each painting. So you can imagine that it just took a long time, plus all the research for this trilogy that I'm working on for the Sefer Yetzirah, which is a core foundational sort of philosophy in both the tarot and the Kabbalistic tree. I was doing this at the same time, and this book was becoming bigger and bigger until it became a trilogy. And so one is on its origins, one is on its form and its function, and the last is on its influence on the tree and the tarot. And so this little booklet was sort of a very reduced, like if we use the tarot and we use it for divination, which was not necessarily its original purpose, but it has been for centuries. And if we use it for divination, then this is sort of a quick guidebook if we were to look at this system really very with fidelity to the Sefer Yetzirah.
Yeah, for our listeners that don't really know anything about tarot, can you give us like a brief introduction to the history and why we use it today?
Yeah. So we don't really know where it came from and what its purpose was. It showed up in Europe in the 15th century, in the mid 15th century, and we still have many of these Sforzi Visconti decks, which were in circulation at that time. Now there were no sort of user manuals or anything like that. Basically, what we can read from people at that time period that were talking about it, they were saying that they felt that these were spiritual cards that were used for reflection. Now, the reason that I believe it's associated to an old esoteric Hebrew system is because in the tarot deck, you have 22 cards, which are called the major arcana. These 22 cards are archetypes that can transcend any time period, any gender, any age. I mean, they're just archetypes like wisdom and justice and things like that. And it's really, these 22 cards are really the voyage of the Fool. The Fool is the 0 card. And the Fool, in my opinion, is, and I'm not the only one to have this opinion, but I'm the only one to put it this way. We are all part of one omnipresent being in a dream of multiplicity.
Wow.
And the Fool is trying to find his way home, or my way home. I'm trying to find my way home. Usually the Fool is blindfolded because he doesn't know that he is all things. And every single person he meets on his voyage of self-discovery is going to be just a reflection of himself. Because I am every you and me, I am every here, I'm every there, I am an omnipresent being. So it's this idea that the ego, the Fool, is going through this journey, this dream of multiplicity. And it's really just a hall of mirrors. And every one of these 22 major arcanas is something we can all relate to. It's all part of the education we get in this great university of life. We are all the magician. We're all the high priestess. We're all the lovers. We're all the devil. We're all these things. We have our good and our bad poles, and we have, these archetypes. And then you have the minor arcana. So the minor arcana is basically divided into 4 suits, which are represented by 4 elements. And so you have the suit of cups, which is represented by water, and it represents our heart and our emotions, our intuition. Then you have the suit of swords, which represents our intellect and our mind. The suit of wands is our intentions and actions. And the suit of pentacles, discs, or coins, depending on the deck, is manifestation, how we work, how we impact this world with our heart, mind, and actions. So it sort of incorporates all of them in the discs. And you have in the minor arcana an ace to 10, and then you have varies depending on the decks, a princess, a prince, a queen, and a king. Each princess is also water and emotion. Each princess is also a disc, is like the disc, is earthy and manifests. The queens are all watery and they're emotional. The kings are all airy and intellectual. And did I miss someone? The princes are fiery and full of action. So when you have something like the Queen of Swords, the queen is the emotional part of the intellect. But if you have the King of Cups, he's the intellectual part of the emotions. So you have this sort of combination. And the Sefer Yetzirah does the same thing with 22 letters and 10 spheres. And it cycles the letters through the spheres, and this impacts the polarity of the letters. So that wisdom is either wise or ignorant, depending on where it is on the tree. Just in the same way we shuffle our cards, and whether they come up positive or negative determines whether that part of the reading is either, for example, wisdom or ignorance. So, and there's tons and tons of parallels with the astrology, all kinds of parallels between the two systems. But in a nutshell, that's the major arcana and the minor arcana, and it's the story of the fool that goes through this deep voyage of the major arcana, and the minor arcana is more like how it's manifesting in our day-to-day life. So, for example, all the twos deal with polarity. So if you get the Two of Cups, it's the emotions in polarity. It's when we meet someone else, right? It's our mirror. It's how do we connect? Is it positive or negative? Whereas if it's the Two of Swords, it's the intellect in polarity. How do we act when we discuss different types of ideas? Are we competitive, or are we appreciative of the new information? Are we engaging? The Two of Wands. What is it like to work with someone? You see what I mean? So, and then they go into the threes, the fours. So there's a numerology that corresponds to the Sefer Yetzirah, or for the trees, or for the decks that are based on the Kabbalistic trees. They are based on that numerology because it is not the same numerology. The Kabbalistic tree changed the positions of some of the numbers, in specifically the 5 and the 6, the most very important numbers. But anyway, I should definitely stop there because I could talk about this all night.
No, but it's fascinating. It's really fascinating. And I love that you know so much about it because, it's become popular again. It's probably always was popular, but you can do tarot card readings. Everyone's buying tarot cards. And like you said, it's a fascinating, it's like its own language, its own world in itself, So how beautiful for you and this team of artists to create your own decks.
Yeah, it's been so magical. We've had dreams about it. I've had visions about it. It's been all of us, and I'm not the only one. My friend Martina just had a dream about it the other night. But they're all sort of informative, and it's almost like, okay, we jumped in a flow that was just supposed to be, because there's just, even though, of course, every big challenge, like every big project like this has its challenges, it's been in a flow. And things have unfolded organically and easily, and we've been able to see them and understand them through our own intuition and dreaming.
Yeah, and I love that it's finally finished and people can check them out. We're definitely going to share that in the show notes. But just to talk about something a little different, I'm curious how you feel about AI. Everyone's been talking about AI lately. The artist world is not very happy with it. It's been taking a lot of different pieces of art, combining it, making its own thing. How do you feel about it?
Okay, yeah, so it's a super important question for our human community right now. And so I think like any tool, if it's controlled, it could be extremely helpful for not only art, but for health and for research and for writing and for loads of things. The problem is when AI was being researched, it had a research status. Therefore, it could use our artwork to try, to develop its own thing, right? But it became commercialized. And this is extremely bad that it became commercialized and it was not given the same rules and regulations that anything that is not AI has. For example, if you were to take my painting and copy it and just change the sky color, it would be called plagiarism. There's this, but when AI takes it, it's not considered plagiarism. And this is a huge problem because a lot of people are losing their jobs, especially illustrators and graphic artists. And they literally are losing masses of jobs in that industry because it's so easy to just prompt your own image. And then I have friends that really use AI in their own work. They use it as inspiration. They play with it by putting their own artwork through and then manipulating it. And I mean, that should be totally something we should all be able to enjoy. It's just a tool. So I think it just needs regulation. And this goes for every single aspect of it. The only thing that I am absolutely 100% terrified of and am 100% against is this AI in military use because I don't know if you saw that Netflix documentary called Killer Robots, but they explain how we are now at a stage where the AI within military is so advanced that if, for example, one of the top pilots on the, in the U.S. Military was to, they show this top pilot trying to beat an AI pilot, and there's just no way. And right now they have the capacity to decide who should be killed. Now the Americans, are saying that there are rules that there should be a person behind there, but China and Russia and Iran and, they all have it too. So how long is that going to last? I'm sure it's very dangerous what we're playing with.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Like you said, it's a tool, but it needs to be regulated, and we all have to play by the same rules, which won't necessarily be true of all countries. So that's quite scary.
Exactly.
And why do you think the arts are important in today's world?
Well, it's interesting. I really understood that when I became a public school art teacher when I was in my early 20s. I'm 60 now. So this was a long time ago, but I started teaching in a big public elementary school, kids from kindergarten to sixth grade. And there were 1,200 kids. I mean, it was a big Chicago school. And they had never had an arts program. And I realized these kids, when they would come to class, they were so excited because art, I guess there is a way of teaching art where it's like, no, that's wrong. I think that I would do classes like put on some different sort of 30 seconds of music. Some would be la, 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 and some would be la, 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 and I would say, draw the music, or what color is that music? And these kind of things, which don't have a right or wrong, but can inspire you to start expressing feelings through color and form and things like that. And these kids, it was an opportunity to go from classes where, often children, they say they're ADHD because they're not engaged. They're not inspired. Believe me, if they have a game that they like, they're not going to be ADHD. I have 2 children and a granddaughter. I've seen that. If they want, think of myself, think of yourself. And so, they're not engaged. But when you give them things where they can explore who they are and how to express it, and it's this sort of freedom rather than just everybody be quiet, we're all going to memorize this, we're all going to, that kind of learning I think is detrimental. I think we have to open up a creative type of learning. And I think that creativity is important for just our souls, just so that we have this sense of freedom, of being able to just, otherwise things become redundant and banal and repetitive,
I think that's a beautiful way of putting it, and very important to the world today. And tell us a little bit about how you would define creativity in your own words. I think you've done it a couple of times in this recording, but in your own words, what would you say creativity is?
So I guess, we've talked a lot about it. So how would I sort of narrow it all down to just the bullet point? Creativity is really believing in your own decision. There's two things that happen when I paint or when I write. There's both the cerebral, I'll refer to painting here. There's the cerebral aspect of coming up with the composition, and, that takes, I can't talk to people, I need silence, and I'm, really sort of working things out. Often I'm measuring things. I might use compasses, and, it's quite cerebral. And then once that's all set up, there's another process that happens where I'm working from, I can talk to any of my good girlfriends on the phone because I'm no longer painting with my head. It's just coming out. And in fact, if I'm talking and enjoying the conversation, then it's even better, because it's like there's this ease and this sort of discovery that's happening that is so intuitive that it's almost better to have a distraction from my brain so it doesn't get in the way. So I would say that creativity is really allowing yourself to go for it, and you have to try and try again before you're satisfied. When you're trying a new medium, you can't expect to be as good as people who've done it for 20 years. You can't judge yourself. You have to just do it and be passionate about it and discover who you are. It's a discovery of each of our unique capabilities, and how we imprint this universal energy back into the world.
I think that's a beautiful note to end on. And where can people connect with you, check out your work, check out your tarot cards, and learn more?
Thank you. So my main site for me is actually I put it as artwork-liba.com, because the writing and the curating and my other groups, so I have a few sites out there. But artwork-liba.com is where I have my paintings, and I have links, a whole page on the books I've done, and I have a shop with all the tarot cards and the books and prints and things like that. And then I have another big site, which is called dreamsanddivinities.com. And that is when I bring together lots of people to do events and projects, whether they're in print or in person. And that site sort of keeps you up to date. It's got a link to a newsletter and things like that. So those are the big things. Of course, I'm on Facebook and Instagram for both of those things, Dreams and Divinity, and Liba, wearing Stambolian. Thank you, Crystal.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. I can't wait to see what you'll do next. And we'll make sure to share all of that in the show notes so you guys can click, buy her tarot cards, and support other artists' work. Thanks so much for coming on today, Liba.
Thank you so much. It was a lovely conversation, and I enjoyed myself thoroughly.
Thanks so much for tuning in to La Vie Creative. You can find more information on MissParisPhoto.com. And if you enjoyed this show, please feel free to share and spread the word for all my creative guests. We have the power to help them to keep doing what they love. See you next time.